Designated Survivor Season 2, Episode 8, Home. Now this episode we have Kirkman going to Afghanistan, so we have our two stories actually taking place on two different parts of the planet, which I thought was pretty cool. The Kirkman storyline I thought was pretty interesting. Of course, he goes in, everybody gives him, the great hurrah, and he talks to this guy who ends up having like a small thread throughout the episode. He just got a Michelin star, and so he's talking with this guy, and then of course there's like the main point of why he's there, which is to talk to these two guys and basically figure out who can we make a deal with to pretty much soften the blow of combat. So I thought it was cool the way they kind of went about the story. There was also like a third thread within that storyline which dealt with Hannah and Mike, and pretty much Mike's issues about Hannah, basically her investigations and how he felt that she pretty much fell into Patrick Lloyd's trap by going through this process, kind of investigating this stuff that sort of sparked up some scandals, and now it's of course an ongoing thing with Alex. And of course, we don't get too much information on it, which is unfortunate because they had it as part of the like the recap, and I was looking forward to it. I was like, oh man, we're gonna get some really good steps. We got like a little bit of that when Danes actually calls Kirkman, and she's like, okay, I've looked into this, but we still don't get too much on it in this episode. So I'm looking forward to that within the next two, especially since we're going towards the mid-season finale. But I loved all the storylines in Afghanistan. I actually like all the storylines in general. I thought were pretty well done, but got some surprising moments here for sure. And I guess on the home front, as far as like Seth and Lior, their storylines were pretty surprising, and I definitely like that. But as far as the main story with Kirkman, I like what he had, and him, figuring out who he could trust, what happened after the bombing, and him deciding, if we take off, we let people know that, basically the president would just run after one single, a single coordinated attack. So we have to finish this out. We have to figure out who did this, who can we trust, who can we not trust. So they go through the process. The older guy, he ends up owning a shell company, which of course looks insanely suspicious. But it turns out that it was the younger guy who actually planned the bombing, and there were, they had 4 license plates. There were people that were overheard saying, like, we have to do this for the child / the young one, which he mentioned to Kirkman early on in the episode that was the name that the people give him because he's, younger than everyone else. But I thought that was cool. It's nothing like amazing or groundbreaking. That's a kind of a trope. It's a bit of a trope where it's like we don't know who to trust. There's always that giant piece of evidence where it's like it's definitely that person now because of this one piece of evidence, and then it's like, oh no, it was actually the other person the whole time. So it's not like I haven't seen that a million times in TV, but it was still entertaining. By the end of the episode, once everything's all said and done, Kirkman ends up talking to the chef again, and of course it ends up having to be sad because it's television. Because it was like the whole way through, it's like, oh, this is a guy who's a chef, and it's like, oh, his daughter just graduated, and he's got a wife. And it was like, oh, we always talked about, starting a restaurant and stuff like that because he can cook and everything. It was just like, oh, okay, this is a cool dude, and he's just kind of doing his thing with his tours. And then, of course, it gets to the end, and it's got to be super sad. Where it's like, my wife actually died like 3 years ago, and she had lung cancer, and we thought she'd have more time. Instead of 2 years, she had 2 months. And, of course, I wasn't there, and my daughter never forgave me. And the last time I talked to her was like a year ago, and that didn't really go so well. So it's like, of course, this story where it could have just been a dude who just like cooking and stuff, and it's just like, I want to be home, but I'm also here, and it's just like, the normal dichotomy that people go through when you're in service. But then it has to be like super tragic where he wasn't there for his wife's death, and his daughter doesn't, never forgave him, and they don't even talk anymore, and it's just like, yeah, just television. It just had to be sad. Like the whole time it was just, cheery, and he's cooking for Kirkman and stuff, and then it had to be like super sad at the end. It was just like television. Like it just has to like go downhill there. But other than that, I think everything kind of worked out fine. Of course, the storyline of Hannah and Mike teaming up I thought was pretty cool. And when they're in the car, Mike is talking about how, he doesn't like the fact that she, basically, in his eyes, fell into Lloyd's trap. And he mentions, like, we both protect the president. And she's like, well, yeah, we just do it in different ways. He's like, yeah, I jump in front of a bullet. And I loved her comeback where she's like, well, I'm the one who makes sure that bullet never gets shot. And I was like, that was an epic comeback. And that kind of shut everything down. Plus a bomb went off in front of them. So, they're hunkered down for a little bit, take out the sniper. They get to the safe house they were traveling to. Hannah sees the code that was on the door. It was like 1802 or something. It's like, all right, well, this is a code that me and this guy had before. Basically, when things go crazy, get to the nearest body of water. So they find him. Fortunately, he survives. They move the safe house. Everything kind of, works out there. And then, of course, on the home front, we have, really early on, we have Seth and his brother. So we get introduced to his brother, and they get pulled over. He's like, of course I'm not in the White House because that would be a huge scandal. And then he ends up getting detained for having I think it was like 400 tabs of this drug, even though if it was technically like the medical version of caffeine, it was still a huge amount. So it was a pretty big deal. And it's just like, all right, well, they're going through the processes now. It's like he can't be press secretary, so Lior has to take over, which was a pretty funny scene that didn't go nearly as crazy as I thought it would. But he was kind of just insulting everybody that asked him a question. He just kept calling everybody dumb pretty much, so I thought that was really funny. But we find out as the episode goes on, not only does Seth have an issue, but Lior has an issue because we find out that he's been married for 6 years, and he's also been misfiling his taxes because legally he's married. So he was like, and I love that scene where he was like, oh, it's fine, I'll just pay the difference. It's like, you owe $800,000. Like, not fine. It was like, that's a pretty big deal. So now they both have different issues going on, and we find out as the episode continues. Lior's issue is very interesting. Like, he's married to this woman, and they just kind of work. Like, when they're together, there's no animosity or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, we haven't talked in forever. We don't keep in touch. It's kind of just a formal thing. We're married, and then it's like it just works. Like, it still works for them, and neither of them, by the end of the episode, actually ended up signing the paper. Like, even when he was playing the game, Danes goes to get it, and he didn't sign his portion either. And I was like, oh, it was actually kind of cute. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, they're both so different, and he's almost just awkward. But the two of them just work. Even if they don't even talk, they just have that connection that they both really want to keep. Even if they don't ever really see each other, that's just a connection that they both have. So I thought that was very interesting. They never really talked about the actual solution as to how he could somehow not have to pay $800,000. They just say, like, there's possibly a way. And then that was pretty much it. I don't know, I guess it has something to do with them both not signing. I wasn't sure, maybe I missed something that was obvious, but I was like, I felt like I needed an explanation as to how he suddenly didn't have to pay those $800,000, because it was still, wrong, so I don't know how that worked out, but thought that was cool. We find out that Seth was not the one that owned the drugs, it was actually his brother, and of course that's why he was so adamant about not testifying, because then it would be perjury, and of course if it all came out, it would be, okay, well, now we know that they weren't your drugs, they were your brother's, so we'll put the drug rap on him, but also you committed perjury, so now we still have you both. So of course that's why he didn't want to testify, and they had to find another way around it. And Danes once again was super awesome during her kind of, basically she's like a terminated lawyer. Like, every time they do it, it's pretty much all of her scenes, at least so far, have basically been the end of every lawyer show ever, where it's like they have all the answers that they need to win. That's pretty much every one of her scenes, and maybe that's why I like it so much, because it's not the full drawn out episode where they have one case and then the new bit of evidence comes in, and they kind of have that a little bit. And I'm sure we'll get back to that, especially with this ongoing investigation. But in this one, she just hit the cop with the quotas, which is a real life thing where it's like technically cops don't have quotas, but it's always kind of suspicious when certain things happen. It's like, why is this sudden speed trap here or whatever? And it's like, it seems like it's quota based, but of course every cop will always say there are no quotas. But she hits him with the questions like, all right, well, in September how many did you have? And I was like, all right, well, 43, and then October was 47, and it was like, all right, well, how many in November? And he was like, 14. And it's like, that seems oddly suspicious, because he instantly came up to them, and it was like, all right, I need you instantly to step out of the car, because he, moved the backpack. So, fortunately, everything works out there, and everything's dismissed, and, ultimately, like most things in the show, it all, pans out, and it's actually pretty cool. But I like the way it was handled, and it was definitely interesting seeing Seth have to deal with this, and then of course him and Emily now being closer, possibly being in this relationship, how that's going to affect them, especially now that Emily will most likely still have to tell Kirkman exactly what happened. So, curious how that's going to play out, and it seems like, I mean, granted, it was just the promo for the next episode, but there is a segment where Seth mentions resigning and stuff. Could have been totally taken out of context, because it's a trailer, but it seems like that may or may not come up, and there could just be, it might not even have anything to do with this episode. It could just be another random issue comes up that, Seth just doesn't feel like he's capable of handling or whatever. Because, I mean, that's how the season started anyway, was him looking into going somewhere else because he didn't feel like he could really handle it anymore being the press secretary. So that could just be coming full circle, and it might not even have anything to do with what happened in this episode. But, we got 2 more to go. Mid-season finale is coming up very soon, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Next episode seems to have a lot of the characters splintering off, including Seth, which, they had actual dialogue for him. But it seems like there's a lot, the whole divided they fall, that sort of thing. So, seems like it'll get pretty dramatic in the next episode, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I would love to know your predictions going into these next 2 episodes. I mean, of course, the next one is seemingly going to be them falling apart. And then after that, if they're apart and then the mid-season finale comes up, that should be pretty crazy. So I'm looking forward to that. I assume we'll get back to the ongoing investigation in the next episode, and that'll be one of the elements that starts to kind of splinter everybody apart. And then who knows with the mid-season finale. I'm still kind of thinking Patrick Lloyd might not be dead. Never saw a body, so television has always taught us that if you don't see the body, they're probably not dead. They'll find some magical way to bring them back, and it's easy for him. He could have just been gone before they sent the strike. Like, he could have just known that it was happening. He may not have even been in the exact same area we thought he was in. There's so many possibilities with the resources they claimed for the character. There are a million ways he could have gotten out of it, and I would totally believe it. So he might come back in the mid-season finale. That theory could be totally wrong, but like I said, never saw an actual body, so I always assume the person's alive until it's been like 2 seasons or something, and then I'll be like, okay, never saw a body, but they haven't shown up for 2 seasons. They're dead. But that's my theory. I still think he might come back, and of course, I assume, I have to assume that the ongoing investigation is going to pick up in these next 2 episodes, because that's really our overarching story this time. Since Lloyd was the story for the last season, figuring out what this secret organization was, now it's the sort of final move that he's played, at least so far. If he's not dead, we'll see more. But looking forward to what's going to happen. But like I said, would love to know your predictions for these next 2 episodes, and just want to know what you guys thought about this one in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.